Okay, so now we're going to talk about core strengthening or abdominal bracing. Abdominal bracing is a game changer. If you've done your research and you've been out there looking for the answers to the two questions that I found early on in practice, the why did I get this and the how do I never get it again, there's lots of different opinions from a lot of brilliant people out there who are offering free explanations for why you got what you got and how to avoid it. Some of them I have to kind of scratch my head a little bit. I heard one colleague say that abdominal bracing was ridiculous. It's so not ridiculous. It's a game changer, and when I learned and started to apply it to my personal life, I'm a hunter, and if I've harvested a deer and I'm dragging that deer and I'm not engaged in my core and abdominally bracing, then guess where 100% of the strain of the mass of that drag is? It's on my spine. And this is neutral spine angle. If I go off neutral, and if you've ever had significant back pain, just washing a dish in the sink or brushing your teeth can be excruciating. So this is neutral, and when I go off neutral, the load force on the lower back goes up exponentially. I read many years ago where a 6 foot tall, 180-pound man that bends 90 degrees at the waist, the perceived load value on the low back, or L5, is almost 500 pounds. You put a 10-pound weight in his hand and have him extend his arms, it doubles. So it's pure physics. If the big muscles of the back are looking for a lever to work off of, they're holding you up. And if my core, my abdominal core is not engaged, then guess what the lever is? My spine. And we don't want that. So I've done bazillions of traditional crunches where you're lying and on a sit-up board at an incline thinking that was a great idea. If the problem with that is that you're anchoring your pelvis against the resistance of the floor, and you're using that as a fulcrum or a pivot point. And I don't like that. And it's actually not something that we do in real life. We're doing this. We're reaching and picking. We're grabbing our kids. We're leaning into the car to pick up the kids. So you want, and I call it abdominal amnesia. That's the way the body works. If I'm raising the IQ of a certain area because of repetitive stress, repetitive posture, and history of trauma, i.e. braking and accelerating, then the left side is getting amnesia. It's not being trained how to work. It's being tempted to not work at all. And the right side's being trained to work overtime. So what we have to do, what we should do, is train the core to work all of the time. I have taught in practice over the years to do this very deliberately and not a whole lot of weight. Because I find that if you're doing an exercise, sometimes if your goal is to do it too fast or use too much weight, then you start recruiting the wrong musculature and you're doing it wrong and you're creating more windup. So you can use a resistance band of any kind in your home. You anchor it to a stationary post like a pole or a stair banister or something secure. You secure it to where it won't hit you in the back of the head, and I know that from experience. And you're going to do different types of trunk flexion and rotation movements, but they all start and originate in this box. And when you go back from the end of the movement, you're going to go through the recovery phase controlled by your core. 1,000% of the execution of the movement, which is the positive phase, and then the negative phase, if you know about when I have a dumbbell and I'm doing shoulder work, this is positive and this is negative. Concentric, eccentric. The eccentric is the one where you want to focus more, because that's when you're resisting the weight going back to its resting position is the hardest part of it, and that's when you're building the most strength. And so the entire movement of core strengthening is important. And if I were to anchor it in a standing position on a post or something stationary behind me, then I can hold the weight like this, and I can go through a movement all the way to the end of the execution and then back to my original resting position, all as a function of this box right here. So if I'm in a gym or I'm at home and I'm able to set up a resistance type exercise like this, and I can go forward, the only thing working in my upper extremity is my hands holding on to the band. As I stay here, my core, my abdominal core is holding me here, not my shoulders. My shoulders are very relaxed. My core is doing that. And I can change. I can go to this side. And as I go back to the resting position, I'm never losing control of my core controlling the movement. That's essential. And if I'm standing, I can make much bigger, much more dynamic movements, because that's what we do in real life. So anytime you go off, remember this is neutral. Anytime I go off neutral is when my core kicks in. And my core kicks in all the way through the movement. And if I'm lifting a box or lifting my child, especially out of a car seat, I'm telling my core to do the lifting. That's not what it does, but it kicks in even more, and that exponentially takes stress off your low back. Abdominal bracing can reduce strain on your low back by 60%. They tested that in the operating room. Okay, so that's my suggestion on core strengthening exercise. It's not necessarily, you're never going to get a six-pack necessarily by doing that particular exercise, but you're going to be able to train your abdominal core to make a body connect and not have amnesia, so that when I'm doing life, the activities of daily living, my core is engaged and it's saving my spine from being the lever that my big back muscles are working off of. And when you're lifting heavy objects, you're telling your abdominal muscles to lift the object, even though that's not what they do, but they kick in to save your spine. They become the lever. And you train that to happen in real life. All right.